he's like, wow, you know, that's a really nice little piano you have there. He's like, where'd you get that piano? He's like, see that dude sitting in the corner over there? He's like, yeah, he's a genie. If you go rub his belly, he'll make your wish come true. He's like, really? He's like, you gotta go over there and rub his belly? Yep. Just go over there and rub his belly. So, the new guy walks over, says, hey, Genie, I hear if I rub your belly, you're gonna make my wish come true. And he's like, yeah, okay. So first just close your eyes, think about what you really want the most in life, and then rub my belly. So the guy's just sitting there going, okay. Goes over and rubs his belly.
Yeah? Am I the genie? Okay.
Then he goes outside. As soon as he opens the door, goes outside, tons of ducks just start flooding him. Like from every direction you can think of, there's just ducks swarming him on the street. He's like swatting off the ducks and just runs back in the bar. And he runs over to the guys at the bar and he's like, there's something wrong with that genie. He's like, I just asked for $1 million and I just got 1 million ducks. And the other guy sitting there says, you think I asked for a 12-inch pianist?
I like the jokes. I like the jokes that don't rely on the punchline to be funny. So you use the term, and I always feel dorky using the word or bringing it up as a topic, but you did use the term social practice. Mm-hmm. Do you feel dorky saying that? Do you feel comfortable saying that? Because I feel like when I say that, I feel like I'm name dropping, or it's a way to show that like, oh, I know about that thing, or oversimplifying a thing. I mean, how do you feel about that, and how do you relate to it?
I think what happened for me is that I was making actions. And sometimes I call my actions art, and sometimes I don't. I think there's variable way. In fact, I think the same action can get read more than one way. And I'm at a point with my production now that multiple disciplines actually value what I'm doing, and will sometimes call it different things too. So what happens is there gets to be a place where it's not just about what I call things, but my public visibility on what I make has gotten to a point where other people start to claim it.
So you're aware that you're speaking a dialect when you say that?
I am, but I'm also always alert to what other discipline, or we could say even in social practice, is a nuance within art, and I'm aware of that nuance claiming what I'm doing. So it probably is a lot less frequent that I sit and think, oh, I'm going to make something that's social practice as a discipline, as a cultural dialogue in art right now, both in Los Angeles, in America, and globally. I'm going to make something that's going to get recognized by that. It's more that I'm making, and then I recognize that these different nuances of the field look at what I'm doing, and it'll happen because, a press person will interview me in a certain way, or a funding stream will respond.
Sure.
Or actually, I'll find a funding stream and I'll realize I can characterize it. That, and they call it social practice, so I call it social practice.
Well, it's funny Blue Dress Park was trying to get that. Maybe you know what I'm talking about. It was a grant for.
The Creative Capital grant.
Oh, I don't know if it was. It was being put up against a bunch of other public projects, and I think it was the only. It was, and it was only. It was only, like, I think it was the only artwork, as far as I could tell, and it's funny how it could sort of take on that double role, which is a little bit sneaky in some ways, because it's the goal. The reason why Blue Dress Park was doing that was to get money, but at the same time, it's not, because it didn't win, so it's kind of a moot point, because I think compared to like a garden that can make food, maybe Blue Dress Park isn't as good as having a cucumber. I don't know. Maybe it is. There's not really a question there. I think I just wanted to talk for a little bit.
I think that's a good question. I want to think about it more. Is it making a cucumber?
Well, no. So it's more complicated. But there's an art aspect and there's a practical aspect, and I think it can get confusing because you can't only judge Blue Dress Park on what it's doing practically, even though that's part of it. You have to sort of be, you have to also sort of judge it on its ability to be self-aware. Again, I don't really have a question. I'm just
well, maybe back to my point of social practice.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's times when like these terms kind of come into public focus, and then I would say that whoever's putting forth those terms or wants to forward them, and I feel like even in like the last 5 years, it's been public art, public practice, social practice, and there's a certain interchangeability for how any of those nuances are going to read what I'm doing, even though I think there's subtle differences between when each of those phrases are used. Mm-hmm. But the point is it's a certain amount for me it's a combination of a acceptance that what I'm making can get publicly viewed a certain way, and then so sometimes I'll adopt using that term because I'm acknowledging that aspect of the field is recognizing what I'm doing that way, and I'm accepting it. Versus another moment, someone might call my work something, and I'll get really resistant to it because I don't want to deal with that nuance of the field.
Right.
So I'm just saying that it's part of committing into public dialogue around my work, and I would argue taking the work out of just what my independent goals are into a cultural understanding of what I made.
I don't remember the context, but you said you didn't like the word conceptual. And then, gosh, I wish I could remember another one.
We were saying a cultural critique embedded in Blue Dress Park is that it's trying to move public consciousness from the material to the conceptual. Yeah. And I think that phrase in and of itself would be difficult to distribute publicly.
Yeah, sure, okay.
So it's more like I'm wondering how to explain, how do you get off consumer culture into, value-based culture?
Well, the other one that I did want to bring up is that, and this isn't a conversation we've had, but I know I've heard you say before, you don't necessarily care if other people think you're an artist or not, or know you're an artist.
A couple of things come to my mind. One is that part of it's a reaction to these, what I think of as first-person nouns. Mm-hmm. It's what does it mean to call myself an artist versus to say I work with art? That art's one of my languages.
Right.
Or what does it mean to say I come out of a certain tradition? I was trained in a sculpture tradition. Right, in visual art. And that affects how I think about language, and it affects that I use space as a material a lot. So why at certain moments might I come forth and call myself an artist? I definitely came also out of a tradition where that was important. So again, I think part of it's just a developmental moment that I'm at and looking at what I'm making. Because sometimes actually, I would say being an artist or working with the arts has helped me always step back and just go to some abstraction or go to the essence of my own gestures. Just back off and stop labeling it and just look at what it is and what it, just try to get the core message I'm actually trying to get across. And I think I have been particularly involved in a form of art practice that does take certain liberties with where it locates itself. And I love sight so much that I just thought it was so much more interesting to make work in all different kinds of contexts. Yeah. And I wasn't just, even though I came out of visual arts tradition, I wasn't just needing to keep committed to a gallery space, for instance. But it still comes down to me kind of, I love poetics, I love metaphor, I love that art can always help me see another perspective that I might have not first read in a situation. So it's not from a lack of loving.
Right. Well, I definitely don't get that impression because your work, even if you're not identifying as an artist, your work is to help artists. So I don't think anyone gets the impression that you're anti-art.
So that's maybe a better way for me to answer it. Because recently I've been thinking, why am I so interested in basically platforming artists?
Platforming artists who maybe make work that is not necessarily antagonistic, but someone who's making an object, which you aren't necessarily interested in and of itself. So
right, because actually I haven't tried to verbalize this before, so let me give it a shot.
Good, exclusive. That was corny.
I think artists inspire me socially, even though they're some of the most awkward people I've ever met in my life.
Thank you.
Deeply and it's strangely complicated, but artists experiment with the social. They're some of the best cultural experimenters I know. So for instance, why I really enjoy being in conversation with artists is that both maybe because they're talking about their practice, but also maybe because they're just talking about what they did today.
Yeah.
their ability to look expansively and to not get stuck in stereotypes about themselves and others, or maybe to be alert to them and call them out. But they actually, for me, you know, to use another phrase, they're cultural producers. Like, they're always creating options for how the social could happen and language you might use. So a quick way for me is to understand culture is it is language itself. You know, it's the clothes I wear, it's the food I eat, it's the accent in my voice, it's how I cut my hair. You know, like, there's all these indicators of me right now that you can do different cultural readings of, and then estimate what other groups I'm connected to because of that. And really, I'm not just one culture, right? This is what postmodernism taught us, is there's just like this incredible layering to any one of our identities in terms of what we're associated to. And I think that, again, sometimes I think what I really value about artists is that kind of cultural experimentation and consciousness that's going on all the time. And the fact that they make art, like they make objects sometimes, or they make specific, concise forms to show that experimentation. I can still love those forms, but I think at some level I'm still essentially interested in the social behavior. It's
true, and I think even artists who aren't interested in like an expanded field pay more attention than a non-art interested person in terms of like dress, like, you know, fashion, and I mean, or even simple things like where they eat. And so for me, I don't identify as someone who's a particularly fashionable individual, but at the same time, people have commented a few times about like having a uniform, and it's something that I didn't necessarily craft, but it's something that I one day decided, no, yeah, that is something I'm going to keep doing. I want you to make a painting just so I could see what it was. Have you made one? Can you please make one for
That is something someone has not asked me to do.
For my birthday? Can you make me a painting?
I like that you're finding this emotional motivator for me, your birthday.
Yeah. Well, I know you won't do it just
actually, if someone could get me to do it, you possibly could. But you have to actually give me a context to paint for. I can't.
I just did. Happy birthday, Brad.
The social situation of your birthday. I'll think about it.